Chapter 952. A powerful force loomed over. At the same time, the elder turned to the second page of his book. The alluring lady smiled, disappearing into thin air. Wilbur let out a cry, his right fist lighting up with a red energy flame that he used to crush the sword shadows in the air. However, dozens of ice spears appeared above his head, shooting toward him with a freezing chill. This was another mid-tier spell, piercing spears. Wilbur cried out wildly, his body burning brightly with red energy flames to ward against the icy spears by force while he activated his pure spirit energy to detect where the lady was located. The ice spears exploded into rampant spiritual energy upon colliding against Wilbur's red flames, bringing about roaring winds. There were no signs of the lady's whereabouts. Wilbur furrowed his brows. This woman was truly powerful. She had literally hidden herself using her dimensional powers so that she could not be detected even through spirit energy. Just then, the man holding the sword cried out as he charged toward Wilbur once again. The air was filled with sword shadows, enveloping Wilbur once more. Wilbur fought against the attacks relying purely on his dragon's powers and his godly training form skills, and both men weaved through the air in a series of explosions. At the same time, the elder flipped to the third page of his book from where he was standing. A terrifying energy began to brew above Wilbur's head. However, the lady's figure did not appear anymore. Wilbur knew, though, that she was his biggest threat. This lady was incredibly powerful, and the thin sword she was holding was a tangible weapon with special powers. Anyone who was pierced by it would activate the sword's attributed properties at once. On the ground, Baz was scared out of his wits. He wanted to flee but was trapped within the confines of the ongoing battle. The spirit pressure that radiated off of all the other cultivators seemed to paralyze Baz completely, rendering him unable to move in the slightest. The next second, a huge, pale, ghostly hand appeared above Wilbur's head. It flailed around wildly, trying to grab Wilbur with a terrifying aura. Another mid-tier spell, the Soul Clutch Hand. Anyone caught in its grasp would have their soul wounded, which would in turn strip them of any ability to continue fighting. Anyone below the sanctuary level would die from the Soul Clutch Hand immediately. Wilbur roared out loudly, and a dragon's howl emanated from within his body. Wilbur sent the man holding the sword stumbling backward with a punch as a long, silver sword appeared in his hand, which he then swung toward the Soul Clutch Hand. The silvery sword was a weapon that Wilbur had conjured out of pure spirit energy. The Soul Clutch Hand was also an attack that targeted the soul. It could be said that this was a battle between spirit energy and the soul. Wilbur was going to go against a mid-tier spell that targeted the soul, using nothing but his pure spirit energy. Just then, a thin sword appeared out of nowhere behind Wilbur to stab him in the hip. At the same time, Baz flew to his feet and charged toward Wilbur. His body began to grow as he made his way over, muscles bulging out of his skin like a giant as he hurtled toward Wilbur, launching a punch strong enough to make the air constrict. Another sanctuary-level cultivator. "You're dead, bastard!" Baz cried out. Yet Wilbur seemed to not see him at all, swinging his sword toward the Soul Clutch Hand. Baz's blow had already reached Wilbur. The lady's thin sword had touched Wilbur's skin and would pierce through his body with just the slightest movement. The man holding the sword exploded with rolling spiritual flames, and runes lit up along his sword. It was as if this was the ultimate blow, and he was giving it all his might. All of a sudden, an explosion rang through the air. The man holding the sword was spooked and swung his sword into the air. A screw bullet was crushed, but the man's sword was also obliterated into rampant spiritual energy. At the same time, two jagged long swords whipped through the air toward the elder.